Shanti. Yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedam cha prahinoti tasmai tamha devam atma buddhi prakasham mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Surendra, I just turned the audio on. Okay. श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तं तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यानस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततो मानतोऽस्मि। ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतम् पश्यनात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यत्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये यस्यैव स्फुरणं सदात्मकम् असत्कल्पार्थकं भासते साक्षात् तत्त्वमसीति वेदवचसा यो बोधयत्याश्रितान् यत्साक्षात्करणाद् भवेन्न पुनरावृत्तिर्भवाम्भोनिधौ तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नानाचिद्रघटोदरस्थितमहादीपप्रभाभास्वरम् ज्ञानं यस्य तु चक्षुरादिकरणद्वारा बहिस्पन्दते जानामीति तमेव भान्तमनुभात्येतत्समस्तं जगत् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये देहं प्राणमपीन्द्रियानपि चलां बुद्धिं च शून्यं विदुः स्त्रीबालान्दजडोपमास्त्वहमिति भ्रान्ताभृशं वादिनः मायाशक्तिविलासकल्पितमहाव्यामोहसंहारिणे तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः। इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। Sorry about the audio. So many things I have to make sure that I do, and I sometimes don't follow all the steps. But anyway, just before Surendra called me, I already realized, so I fixed it. But the chants you all know, so you should be able to do without my chanting it with you. So we are in the revision of the 4 sutras, and so before we get back to it, I was just noting that one of the names of the Brahma Sutra has several names that it is referred to. 4 of them actually come to my mind, 3 or 4 of them. So one is, of course, Brahma Sutra. It's also called Vedanta Sutra, because this is an important thing, that The Brahma Sutra is not the brainchild of Vyasacharya ji. He is more of an editor, just like he is for all the Vedas and Mahabharata and so on. So even in the Brahma Sutra, he is simply presenting to you what has been explained in the Upanishads. So it's called Upanishad Sutras. Then of course it is called as Vyasa Sutra, because he is the author he is the editor. He is not the original idea. That is all given by Parameshwara. But nevertheless, he was the one who put it all together in these 555 sutras. So it is also called Vyasa Sutra. But then the last one is the one I wanted to spend a couple of more minutes on. It's called Sharirika Sutra. Sharirika Sutra. Sutrani. That's the one of the names, and an important one to understand why it is called Sharirika. So, Sharirika is a Sanskrit derivation from the word Sharira. So, Sharira means the body which is in the process of actually going down by itself. It's slowly disappearing. So this is what is called Shiryamanatvat Shariraha. Shiryamanatvat means one that decays. That's the right word. Not goes down, but the one that decays is called Sharira. So the Sharira here means really the entire set of things that we are endowed with in order to lead our life. And so all aspects of it, both the Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha, all 5 of the koshas constitute the word Sharira. Okay? So the word Sharirika means Sharire Bhavam iti Sharirikam. Sharire Bhavam means the one that dwells in the Sharira. It is not the Sharira, but the one who dwells, one who lives, one who empowers the Sharira is called Sharirika. Simple way to visualize that is our very good example in the modern times of electricity and the appliance. I think that is a great example that we should just keep in front of our heart all the time as we visualize who I am, what am I doing, what is all this life about. Beautifully, I think it's if the electricity was there in the time in the 7th or 8th century when Adi Shankara was supposedly be there, then he would have given that example. There are other examples given similar to that, but I think the modern example of the electricity in the appliance is completely appropriate. So there, the electricity is the one that is present in all the appliances, that makes the appliances do what they are supposed to do without being affected. Electricity is not affected by the conduct of the appliance, but it has this beautiful feature that can allow a number of different types of appliances to function. So similarly, the Sharirikam, like the electricity, is the one that makes the Sharira function. All the various functions of the Sharira. Very interesting that just like you have a appliance that can have multiple things. Like for example, it can be a heater, or if you change the setting, it can become a cooler also. I believe you can get those kinds of things from Costco or Amazon, where you, in a single appliance, you have both the heater as well as the cooler. Similarly is the case of our sharira, where both sukha and dukkha, both the pleasant experiences and the unpleasant experiences can occur in a single sharira. But the sukha dukkha, all the pleasant and the unpleasant experiences are really jada by themselves, but they are powered by the sharirikam, by the atma. Sharirikam means the atma, Brahman. Only single thing. The electricity also, even though it is generated at different places, let's say, electricity also has shades of differences. So there's a 220 volt, there's a 440 volt, there is a very strong electricity, weak electricity. But all 220 volt electricity is the same around the world. Here the Atma is a very interesting entity because it is unique. You see, this is what this is what our acharyas say, that the self is not an ordinary thing. And the self, meaning your own truth, your own reality, is not an ordinary thing. It is an amazing thing like nothing else in the world. But we need to appreciate that. I think I mentioned that to you in one of these classes, that the word appreciation certainly personally appeals to me a lot. And some of the training from Swami Dayanand Ji also, where he said that standard words like realize, they give you a wrong impression. So, self-realized person. It is true, but the word meanings become distorted. But the word appreciation I think is a very beautiful English translation of the word. And so the appreciation means I'm using the word realize, we don't appreciate the uniqueness of the Atma. The uniqueness of the Atma is that unlike electricity that can be manufactured, has a beginning and an end. Electricity also has a beginning and an end. Although from a relative scale, if you look at electricity and the appliances, that relationship holds, that it is independent of the appliance, it powers the appliance, it is seen through and through the appliance, but yet it is not affected by the appliance. So that relationship holds. But at least relatively speaking, the electricity also is something that has to be manufactured, has to be created, and in fact can be switched off. Atma, Brahman, is so unique that it functions as the power of the whole world, and yet you cannot switch it off. That is really something to think about. And in fact, the fact that it cannot be switched off creates a problem for me. You see, this is what is called mimamsa. Mimamsa means the the, a correct understanding through analysis is called Mimamsa. So I think the Brahma Sutra can also be called Mimamsa Shastra. I'll come to that in a minute. I am driving to a word that I'm going to introduce, not introduce, but I'm going to talk about in just a few seconds, a minute or so. But just to complete that thought, the Atma is unique. Ishvara. Atma is the Ishvara, as the very Brahman, very content of Ishvara, is unique because it is the underlying basis of everything, as Satyam Jnanam Anantam. And you cannot distinguish it by seeing it being switched off. Because who is going to see it being switched off? Who is going to? Is it going to be the human being? Human being is the creation of, it's the appliance. The appliance cannot see that the electricity is switched off. No. Electricity is the one that is making the appliance being what it is. And so it is a karya, it is an effect. An effect cannot see the cause. This is why, for example, when we say, well, I was born, so this is what happens every day. You have to write a new application or something. And I don't know, it was interesting. You just have to just say, I was born on such and such day. You were really not born on such and such day. But you know what happens is that you don't know the Atma, that it cannot be born. And so therefore you only take the body and the mind, the sharira. Sharirikam is not born. Anyway, that's the difficulty of understanding, because the way the human beings are, we can distinguish between things on an absence and present. Was he there? Was he not there? How can you find something which is always there? And in fact, the way we function is because of that being always there. So to see that requires a certain mimamsa. So here Swami Maheshananji had presented this in some of the books that I was reading. He says, it's interesting. If you look at what is called Duandwa. Duandwa means the pair of opposites. So heat and cold is a Duandwa. Sukha dukkha is a Duandwa. Dandvati atitaha is what is said in our Shastra. So this Duandwa, which is a pair of opposites, which is an integral part of this creation. Beautiful. Just look at the way Ishvara has made the creation, where, really speaking, any one thing can have two ends of the swing of the pendulum, this way and that way, and it goes back and forth. So or you can say it is circular, either one. So North Pole and South Pole, Sukha and Dukkha, heat and cold, short and long. So these are all called Duandwas. Anyway, Swami Maheshananji says that these Duandwas are of two kinds. One is an external Duandwa and one is an internal Duandwa. The external Duandwa is relatively easy to distinguish. Like take heat and cold. And so in the morning, since our children have now grown up and left and so on, we turn the heater off in the winter time at night time. Completely off. I don't know what you do, but we turn it off to save on the electricity. And then in the morning, it's interesting, every morning when I get up, I can see the outside temperatures from the inside temperature that it comes out to be. And so these days it is 64 degrees internally. So if it's outside is like 48 or so, then our house has good insulation. Then at about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, it is at about 64. It can be 65, 62. The lowest it has gone to this year, one time, only a couple of days, was 61, when it is freezing outside. And in the summertime, of course, it goes differently. Anyway, what I'm saying is that the heat and cold is easy to distinguish. Oh, it's very hot, so let me remove my sweater. Or if it is very cold, let me put some extra clothing on. Easy to do. Internal Duandwas are much more difficult to distinguish. You see, to distinguish, the whole idea is the difficulty of distinguishing. So heat and cold are relatively easy to distinguish from yourself. You can say the weather is very hot and it's making me warm. So you already, in this analysis, you have a distinction between outside and inside. Relatively easy. But the internal Duandwas, Sukha Dukkha, are a little bit harder to distinguish from yourself. It is exactly like an appliance which has an electricity as an integral part of the appliance is harder to see the difference between them. So this is what the Sharirika means. Sharire bhavam iti sharirikam. So this is the Atma, which is more difficult to distinguish between the one which is never born, independent of time, self-existing, Swayam Jyoti, from its effect, which is the Panchakosha Sharira. Much more difficult. So this is what sort of triggered my thought. This is called Adhyatmika Vidya. In the words in Sanskrit, this is an important word to know, which is Adhyatmika Vidya. The reason I decided to open this class with this is because what we are doing in Brahma Sutra is learning Adhyatmika Vidya. And by the way, I would say this is where there is no comparison to Sanskrit in any other language, except if you have vernacular languages like Telugu or Malayalam or Hindi, Gujarati, that has those words preserved. In Hindi, we have Adhyatmika Vidya in Hindi itself, and I'm sure you have it in other vernacular languages also. There it is okay. But in English, it is difficult to translate Adhyatmika Vidya. What is Adhyatmika Vidya and how is it difficult to translate? This is why the translation in English becomes not as effective as learning in the original languages. What is Adhyatmika Vidya? Adhyatmika Vidya means a knowledge which helps you to distinguish this difficult separation between Sharira and Sharirika, between the appliance and the electricity, so to speak. And that Vidya, which has to be carefully looked into with a lot of arguments, is really what we are doing. This is called Adhyatmika Vidya. So if you were to translate that in English, how would you do that? You will say the knowledge that helps you to distinguish between yourself and what you take yourself to be. This is how the full translation of the word Adhyatmika Vidya would be. So this is really the Adhyatmika. This is what is called. So I just wanted to explain to you why it is called Sharirika Sutra. Brahma Sutra is called Sharirika Sutra because it is Adhyatmika Vidya. This is good to know and good to grasp and good to keep in mind as we not only study in a text, but when we look at our lives and to see how the subtle distinction has to be made between something which is anatma, which is an appliance, which has a beginning and an end, and the Atma, which is never born, which powers the Anatma. That distinction should be the subject of our life. This is what needs to happen. Right now we are only dwelling in the Anatma. And within the Anatma we try to get wisdom. Means health, how to have better health, not to have carbohydrates. This is all within the Anatma. How to find the best job and marrying the right person. All this is Anatma. And we've been used to doing that in our life. But the Adhyatmika life, see that? The Adhyatmika life introducing a brand new factor, which we have never done before. And that is to distinguish and to become wise, to obtain wisdom between Atma and Anatma. Much more subtle. But it has to be done. In order for, if you want freedom, if you want freedom from death, if you want immortality, this is exactly what needs to be done. So the Adhyatmika Vidya, which is the study of Brahma Sutra and other texts also, is the Mimamsa. It is the analysis of the subtle differences between Atma and Anatma. And here the Anatma is not the outside Anatma, that is relatively easy to distinguish, but the one which appears to be me, but is not me, which is the Sharira. So that's why this is called Sharirika Sutrani. Oh my gosh, 20 minutes. Anyway. That's a completely separate subject from what our revision is. So I thought that I will introduce that as part of the teaching. Excuse me. Okay, let's resume where we were. So we were still doing the revision of the second verse, and if you recall from the last class, we were seeing that the second sutra, Janmadyasya Yataha, right, is providing us with the lakshana. We were just talking about the uniqueness of the sharirikam. So that is, the uniqueness means the lakshana. What is the distinguishing characteristics of the Brahman that we should be looking for? So there we saw the lakshana is of two types. This is what we were in the last class. One was the tatastha lakshana, one was the swarupa lakshana. And we ended the last class with doing a meditation on tatastha lakshana. Right? This is where we were. But the tatastha lakshana should lead to swarupa lakshana. Right? So in the example that we saw, I don't remember what example we took, but let's say that all the houses look alike and you have to point somebody out. You can't even say the third house from the left. It's interesting if you go to on 101 and you go to South San Francisco. Really, it's a very amazing thing. This is what Swami Dayanandji saw, and he pointed out there are like 40 homes. I don't know, next time I'll go, I might even try to count it. So if there's only 5 homes, you can say second from the left. But if there are 40 homes and you are somewhere in the middle, it is difficult to do that. So you'll say, there's my house, we are going to go there. You have a friend from India who is coming in, you picked him up from the airport, and you're taking him to your home in South San Francisco, and you have one of these 40 homes, and you say, oh, that's my home. You say, which one? How do you say that? Because you cannot say number 19th from the left-hand side. That's too many to count. Fortunately, there is a crow sitting on the house, or a large bird. And you say, you see that house where the crow is sitting? And say, yes, that is my house. Now, just as you say, the crow now flies off. He's busy looking for some food. He was only there just in time for you to see something, but he flies off. If the crow flies off, the house is still there, but it has done the job of pointing out which the house is. Then you can say, you see, this is a different shade from the others. We just got it repainted recently, and so on. Then this is called Swarupa Lakshana. You can say, by the way, I added a third story. You can see now the third story. This is called Swarupa Lakshana. Because the crow is gone, the relative Lakshana is gone, now the Swarupa Lakshana. So in the analysis of the Brahma Sutra, obviously various objections and doubts are pointed out. This is all part of the understanding. All the things that we saw earlier also, and some more will be coming today, is a way to clearly understand exactly what is being talked about. So this is where the Purva Paksha and Siddhanta, the objectioner and the overruling of the objectioner, is pointed out. Here, one question in the mind of the objectioner, or the doubter, if you can say, not an objectioner, more of a doubt. Why is Vyasacharya talking about Tatastha Lakshana, not Swarupa Lakshana. Tatastha Lakshana is a step. Why is he taking that step? Just go directly to Swarupa Lakshana. How is the second verse, second sutra, I keep saying verse, but the second sutra. How is the second sutra at Tatastha Lakshana? Janmadi yasya yataha. You see, it is not saying Satyam Jnanam Anantam. It is saying, so the Janma, Sthiti and Laya is like a crow. You see, exactly like supposing there was a crow sitting, and you say the house is where the crow is sitting and where this crow flew off from. You can see that while you were pointing out, the crow has now flown off. You say, you see the house from where it took off? He says, yes, that's the house. So the crow came and went. But in the meantime, it created the wisdom in a person of something which was unaffected by the crow. Similarly, here also, Janmadhyasya yataha means that from which the whole tamasha, this whole play originated in, will stay there and will disappear. And it will disappear, but the person, the sharirikam, will stay right where it is. So the question is, why is Vyasacharya saying Janmadhyasya yataha? Why couldn't the second sutra give the Lakshana Satyam Jnanam Anantam? The answer is, it is not as easy to understand the Swarupa Lakshana until you first go through an intermediate stage of Tatastha Lakshana. Swami Paramarthananda had given this example that supposing, I remember when we were at the Jain temple. In the Jain temple we have this huge hall, and once in a while when the Swamis will come, we would have, if you remember, the meeting in the main hall, the classes in the main hall. And the stage is like, 3 feet high. And it is very difficult to jump from, very difficult to go directly from the floor to the stage. So you have to provide some steps. So you go to step number 2, step number 3, then step number 4 is the stage. So similarly, the Tatastha Lakshana is a step, and it is difficult to go to Swarupa Lakshana without the Tatastha Lakshana. That is the answer to that doubt. Then I should just quickly mention, since we are revising, that Adi Shankara also adds some features to this, which means which points about Brahman as being Sarvagyaha Sarvashaktiman. So he had already done all of that, and I was thinking maybe I'll revise it, but I don't need to. You've already seen that when we first went through, and so this is more of a technical point, and it was given in the Shankara Bhashya also. So this was all done. Now we end with the revision of the second verse with a discussion on a doubt by the Purva Paksha which is an important one. Let's really focus on this, and that is the last one we will do on the revision of the second sutra, which is this. The Purva Pakshi says, well, first of all, let's say what Vyasacharya is doing. Vyasacharya is providing Janmadhyasya Yataha as the second sutra, as giving the Lakshana of Brahman, right? As we have said, it is giving the Lakshana of Brahman. The third sutra, which is going to come up after this, Shastra Yonitvad, gives the Pramana. You already remember the very important sentence. Lakshana Pramana Bhyam Artha Siddhi. If you want to fully establish something, you have to know the Lakshana, which is the unique characteristics, and the Pramana, which is how do we know the uniqueness of the characteristics. If you satisfy both the Lakshana and the Pramana, you now establish the Vastu. This is the general rule which is true everywhere. Right? So now the question is, we say that the second sutra only gives the Lakshana and the third sutra will give the Pramana. Here the Purva Paksha goes off. It says, wait a second. I think you don't need the third sutra for the Pramana, because the statement of the second sutra itself is Pramana. So both Lakshana and Pramana are included in the second sutra. You don't need a separate sutra. We can figure it out. How can we figure it out? This is Purva Paksha saying. Purva Paksha saying we can come out with an understanding. How? Because the one from which all the world came, the one in which it stays, and the one it goes away, that is called Brahman, is exactly like the ornaments in a golden ornaments. So therefore it is the Pramana also, not only the Lakshana. And so really saying that the Nayayikas, which is the modern science, says this is what is called Karya Lingyate Anumanam. From the effect you can see the cause, and so it is done. Now you have both Lakshana and Pramana, which is finished. So why do you have to have a third sutra for doing that? This is what he's saying. This is an important thing to say. Vedanta says no. That's not correct. Why not? This now we will discuss. Okay? So the first thing, so if you want to look at the arguments by the Purva Paksha, that it's the second sutra already includes the Pramanam. There are three reasons for the Anumanam. For this inference to be effective, there are three reasons. First is Jagat Sakartrakam Karyatvad Ghatavat. This is a Sanskrit translation. Not translation, but the Sanskrit definition. Anumana number one is Jagat Sakartrakam karyatvad ghatavat. It says that the Jagat, means the world as we see, must have a creator because it is created like a clay pot. If you have some lump of earth sitting there, you can say that no one really has created anything. But if you have a nice cup, this is a metal cup, but supposing you have a clay cup like this, which got a nice shape to it, and it holds some water you can drink from, then it can be inferred that somebody has made it. Similarly, what we find is that the world is a creation, so there must be a creator. So why do we need to? You see, the one thing to be appreciated here is that you don't need the Vedas to tell you about Brahman. That is the key thing. Even in the Astikas as well as the Nastikas, all the 6 ways of one and 6 ways of the other, they don't necessarily, except for Vedantins and a few others. I'm just taking some general examples. They don't think that Vedas are necessary for us to know about the self. You can figure it out. We say no. So we say that there are 3 things required for us to fully establish our understanding of what the Atma is. One is called Shruti, which is Vedas. The second one is Yukti, which is logical thinking. You can even say inference at that point. And the third one is Anubhava. Anubhava means personal experience. These 3 things are necessary. This is what we say. Nayayikas and some of the others say you don't need Shruti. Just Yukti is enough. Because you can see what's going on, and you can see that if we agree with you that this is a very orderly world, which the sun comes up at the same time, on the same time every year. Once a year it comes out at the same time. And these days, I think I was telling you this last time, we got some new solar panels installed about a few months ago. This is my second set of solar panels. I had some on the roof that were done about 11 years ago, and they were not as efficient. And so they don't provide more than maybe 30 to 40% of our household needs. And so I decided, I don't know how long I'm going to stay here. So there's been a controversy about that. But I decided, you know what, I'm just going to get some new panels. So I just recently got them installed. And it's just fascinating, really, because now the expectation is that both the panels, the old and the new, will together give me about 90% of what my household energy needs are. So this just got installed a couple of months ago. So now I measure, that's the engineer in me, I measure how much was created every day. So they have given me a chart in November, this will be this, December, January, etc. And I'm actually measuring it to see whether their projections were accurate or not. And so, of course, it all depends on whether it's a cloudy day or a sunny day. But I've got uh, a spreadsheet, and every day I look at both the old and the new and I plot it. And it all depends on where the sun is. So in the winter time, this is the worst case. The sun is at an angle. It doesn't come up all the way up to the top. It just goes to the end, and so it doesn't create as much heat and electricity, heat as the light. Sorry, heat and light as the one in the summertime. And so there is some measurement of that. And so I'm very cognizant of how long the day is. And these days, I think it is sun is out for about 10 hours and 25 minutes, I believe. I checked that a couple of days ago. Anyway, what I'm saying is that it is a beautiful thing. What a creation of Ishvara. How seasons are made. You know, I was just thinking of it. Just look at this. Just talking about the sun and Ishvara's creation. And it connected to the fact that the Nayayikas say that this is obvious that somebody created this. Anyway, just one thing, just to think about, honestly. This is a good way for one to appreciate the wisdom of Ishvara, the power and the wisdom of Ishvara. If we think this is created, which is never had a beginning, it was always there, as you know. But suppose you look at it, what a handiwork. Because Ishvara can be seen as an architect. He's called Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma is the world's architect. Architect is the one who kind of closes the eyes and says, yeah, I think it'll be good to design this way. This is what would be. Yes, you can do that. Nothing has really been done, but this all in the mind, in visualizing the very blueprint of what needs to be done. This is the architect's job. Okay? Then, this is what happens when you want to build a home. So you first have to get an architect. Then you have to get a contractor to build it. Right? Then you need all the utility connections. Then you need some maintenance. So all these functions are there. So look at what Ishvara has to be done. Imagine you are Ishvara who wants to create something. What would they do? What would Ishvara do? When you are starting with a blank piece of paper and you want to create something, it'll be a good way to sort of put yourself in the shoes of Ishvara and saying how this will be done. What will you do? You know, I think that the first thing that Ishvara will do is to create light, because all functions need light to do. Not all, but most. Something can be done in the darkness also. But you do need light to be able to distinguish between left and right and forward, all those kinds of things, light. So you also need some heat, because if life has to be sustained, then it requires that it must have the ingredients for its viability, and heat is a very important part of that. So as an architect, Ishvara has to think about at least providing some capability for these two things to be brought about. One is light and the other one is heat. How is he going to do that? The sun. So, in fact, himself, he becomes the sun and he creates the sun so that both of these can be provided. Isn't it obvious? What a beautiful creation. And Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, I admire the fact that not only is the sun created, and the sun is created for an individual life, set of lives rather, not individual one, but all the set of lives. And similarly, they are created all over the universe. Because the number of people in the universe is infinite. Not only the number of people, you can visualize that the number of Vedanta classes going on in the world is infinite. Not like 2 or 3 more like this. No, infinite. All over. And so all the stars have to be created so that there is heat and light. That's a very fundamental one. Then comes a lot of other things along with it. Water and so on and so forth. And also making the heat, along with that is the weather, all the seasons, summer seasons, winter seasons, and how the sun comes back and forth. Remarkable, really. Anyway, going back to this, so the Nayayika says, this is a creation. So there must be an intelligent creator. Why are you not accepting my argument that it is a pramanam? So to counteract it, see, the thing is, he's saying we don't need Shruti. Yukti is enough. We say that Shruti is needed. How? This is an important argument. I think we have done this already before, but just to summarize this is an important one. Here's the thing. So, for you to infer that there is a designer of the world, because there is a design, therefore there must be a designer. A creator of the world requires anumanam, it requires inference. What are the elements of the inference? The elements of inference are what is called Vyaptiyanam. Even though it gets technical, but let's try to grasp this. Vyaptiyanam. Vyaptiyanam means wherever there is this, there must be that. Wherever there is a smoke, there must be fire. This is called Vyaptiyanam. Right? It's called Vyaptiyanam. How are you going to get Vyaptiyanam? Because you have observed it. In your life you have seen that whenever there is a black smoke, there must be fire. Because without, you can get white smoke without fire, but not black smoke, not the carbon oriented black smoke. That only comes from fire. You have observed this. Now you say that there must be a creator. Where did you see that it was created? Where did you see it? Because Vyaptiyanam means pratyaksha. You must be able to have experience that the truth I have seen already. And based on that, whenever I see a black smoke, I can now infer there is a fire. But the inference of the black smoke and the fire can only come about if you actually experience the fact that the fire gives black smoke. Isn't it? Where do you have, and you also need an example. You see, you need an example. Vyaptiyanam means that the example also must, at least one example must be there. Where did you see that Ishvara created the world? Where did you get the Vyaptiyan? Oh well, for here we don't need Vyaptiyan. No, yes you do. You are saying that I want to base my understanding on inference. The elements of inference are something, I don't remember the English word for Vyaptiyanam, but it means that it has a base point that I'm just using some general words. You need some base words, base cases that you can draw from. Here there is no base case. You cannot base case. You cannot say that. So wherever there is a product, there is a creator, cannot be perceptually proven. Cannot be perceptually proven. See, this is exactly what happens when it comes to when it comes to like things like cell phone. Then it is easy to see that there was a creator, right? But what about the earth? What about fire? What about wind? We don't see if there is a creator. So you can infer that yes, there should be a creator. So here, this is an important fact that I'll summarize it. In fact, I think I'll just complete this today, even in the next few minutes or so. So we'll summarize that this is what is called pure logic. Pure logic means sufficient to make a conclusions without the help of the Vedas. It's called pure logic. This is what is called Shushka Tarka. Shushka Tarka, we prove, is not sufficient. We say, on the other hand, yes, you do need Tarka, but it should be Shrutimata Tarka. It has to be, yes, you need inference, but the inference should be based on Shruti. Without Shruti, you cannot come up with your own logic. In fact, we can do like this. Within the Vyavaharika Sat, you can have logic. But for Paramarthika Sat, You need Shruti Vakyas. And also another thing, so I'm summarizing it rather quickly. Another thing, you cannot go in the other direction. The other direction means that you don't need Anumanam. You don't need Anumanam, you just look at whatever the Shruti is saying, and that's enough. If that's what you're saying, we are not saying that. So this is exactly what happens, that in our Tuesday night class, we are focusing on the importance of Atma Vichara, Atma Vichara, right? Self-enquiry. So there will be no self-enquiry necessary if you simply believe in what the Vedas are saying. Say, so yes, I'm just following you, I don't need any. Yes, you do. Of course you do, because your experiences give you some questions. How can you say that I'm free? Shruti says it, but your experience doesn't show that. Therefore, all three are necessary. Shruti, Yukti, but Yukti by itself is not sufficient. You have to go by what the Shruti says. There, it is pointed out in the Shankara Bhashya, you cannot go too much on the other direction which says we don't need Yukti. And in fact, this is the argument against the Karmakandins. Because in the Karmakandins means, let's say somebody, I'm just exaggerating it, but somebody, and not exaggeration, this is a fact, who goes to the temples to pray, has complete Shraddha in the Vedic mantras that are presented, and sees no reason to explore any further. He says you do the karmas and you will get the phalam. Maybe next life, I'm patient. I don't have to finish it in this life itself. I'll do that in next life. And I don't need to inquire. This is the other direction. There is no inquiry, no understanding of the meaning of the verses. If you study Rudram or any of them, you should just say chanting. That's enough. I don't need to understand any meanings of it. This is the other direction. Vedantin says no. Yes, if you want krama mukti and you want to just improve your life to the next life, and from there you improve it even more, and finally you go to Brahmaloka, yes, there I can say that you are not doing any inquiry. But why do you want to do that? First of all, it's very difficult. Very difficult to do that. It is much better to do both the Shruti as well as Yukti. So this is why you say Shravanam and Mananam is necessary. So anyways, this is the central point. The central point of all these objections, we should understand this, is that you cannot rely purely on logic. You do need the Vedic understanding, but based on the Vedic understanding, you have to question yourself and satisfy with the answers given by the Shruti. Both of them have to be done. You cannot just say, okay, I understand, you sound very good, I'm just going to believe in whatever you say. No. But follow the reasoning that is presented by the Shruti. So this is the central part of it, and this particular argument where we give the combination of Shruti and Yukti is all over the place. It's not just one place. Even, for example, in the sadhana Panchakam, which we have done in the previous ones, the verse number 3 says, Dustarkat suviramyatam Shrutimata tarka anusandhiyatam. And then, of course, Shrotavyaha, Mantavyaha, Nididhyasitavyaha. So it means that as a final analysis, Shruti sammata tarkena Ishvara siddhihi natu kevala shushka tarkena Ishvara siddhihi. But this is an important point to see. And why that is the case, we saw the reason is that, the reason is that you don't have a proof that you can base yourself on. By the way, this is an important thing to see, that if you do pure tarka, there is always something that is better which negates the previous tarka. Always something. It will go on forever. So, for example, finding the fundamental particle that explains the entire creation is part of that. Because as science progresses, there's better and better understanding. So the Newtonian laws were considered to be the primary thing for a while. The Newton said that the stage is permanent, but the actors on it are coming and going. But the stage is permanent. The earth and so on is just nothing. You cannot argue with that. This is what Newton used to say. Then came Einstein and completely negated it and said that even the semblance of reality in the stage behind it, you see that the speed of light and the things that you see are not permanent. So he is now completely uprooted the Newtonian laws and came out with the Einsteinian insight. It is very possible that there could be another insight that will negate the Einsteinian relatively. And certainly there is more and more research on the fundamental particles and so on and so forth, strings. So there is a continuous negation of the previous tarka. Tarka means logic. And this will continue. There will be no end to it. We already have the answer. Please explore. By all means use your tarka, but in consistency with what the Shruti already says, which is not subject to interpretation. There is the original truth, always will be the truth. Study it. So this is the main argument that Brahma Sutra provides. And I think with that I will end the revision of the second sutra. We will begin the third sutra next time. And then perhaps I think it will be just a couple of more classes. And then we will see what else needs to be done on the Brahma Sutra. So with that I close the class today. Om Rahu Grasta Divankarendu Sadisho Maya Samachadhanat Sanmatra Karanopasamharanato Yobhut Sushuptav Puman Pragaswap Samiti Prabodha Samaye Yafpatya Vigyayate Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Balyadishu api Jagradadishu tatha Sarvasvavasthasvapi Vyavrittasvanuvartamanamahamittyantaspurantam sada Swatmanam prakatikaroti bhajatam Yo mudraya bhadraya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Vishwam Pashyati Karyakaranataya Swaswami Sambandataha Shishyacharya Tathaiva Putra Putradhyatmana Bhedataha Swapne Jagrati Vaya Esha Purusho Maya Paribhramitaha Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Bhurambhamsya Nalo Nilo Ambar Maharnartho Himamshuh Puman Ityabhati Chara Charatmakamidam Yasyaiva Murtyashtakam Nanyat Kinchana Vidyate Vimrishatam Yasmat Parasmat Vibhoho Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye Sarvatmattvamiti Sputikritamidam Yasmatamushmin Stave Tenasya Shravanat Dattamananat Dhyanat Sankirtanaha Sarvatva Mahavibhuti Sahitam Syadishwaratvam Swataha Siddhyetat Punarashtadha Parinmatam Jaishwaryam Avyahatam Ashubhani Nirachashthe Tanoti Shubhasantatim Smritimatrena Yat Pumsam Brahmatan Mangalam Param Atikalyana Rupatvat Nitya Kalyana Samshrayat Smartranam Varadatvat Chat Brahmatan Mangalam Viduhu Omkarascha Shabdascha Dvavetau Brahmanah Pura Kantham Bhitva Viniryatau Tasman Mangilikau Vubhau Omatha 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 Vasatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. All right, let's see who are on this. I know there's a lot of people who don't log on to this that I don't see. I'm aware of that, but just a quick glance to see who's here. Good to see you all. Yes, Keshab, yes, it is pretty much Dehino Yasmin Yata Dehe. Exactly, the same thing, same Atma. But here what I was pointing out through the Adhyatmika Vidya is that that the Mimamsa of the Dehi and the Deha is the one that we need to uh, continuously focus on. That is what requires, it's not just a once in a kind of a thing. But every stage of the life, you have to make a distinction between one which is totally unique, which is the very content of the creation, and the other one is the creation itself. So, and how it manifests is that for each one of us, there is a Atma and an Anatma, all mixed up together. So that Mimamsa is to be continuously done and learned from on how to do it and to observe it, and that's what is the gate to freedom in life. So, yeah. And so Sri Krishna actually points it out in the very beginning, but then during the course of the Bhagavad Gita, you have to do exactly how. That is revisited from time to time. So that's how that is done. Arvind, you said some books has the Vedanta Darshan title. I don't remember seeing that. I'm not sure which one you are referring to. If you can send me an email, then I can at least look it up. I am not sure of that. So before we leave, I remind everyone that we had promised to hold a Zoom satsang session once a quarter, and we did the last one in the middle of November. So it's about time for us to do a new one. So I will schedule one. Let me think about when that would be. So that'd be nice, where we see each other and talk in a live class for an hour and a half or so. All right, if there's no other questions, then I take your leave and we will hopefully see you next week. Om.